Okay, so I don't have the official assignment sheet for the final paper. I'll get that to you tonight. I had a difficulty this afternoon, and it's just my own boneheadedness. I forgot my book at home, and I walked to work. So I tried the library, I tried the bookstore, no luck either place. So I had to haul ass back home and pick this up. So I lost a good 40 minutes today that I would have otherwise spent on that. But you both know more or less what to do. So does anybody have any questions about anything that's coming up?
Turns out the interlibrary loan, I did have this book.
Oh, okay.
So do you want me to just return this for you this afternoon?
Yeah. If you're going to the library anyway and you want to happen to drop it off, then yeah, please. Thank you. Anything else?
No. Have we decided what day to do the final yet?
So here's what I'm going to do with the final, I think, just to make things easiest for everybody. So instead of having a sit-down final in this room, I'll put it online, and you guys, I'll give you guys a window of a couple of days in which to take it. And then you can just, you'll have the full 2 hours once you start it. You won't be able to pause it, so make sure you're taking it at a time when you have 2 hours to sit and do the work. I figure there's no particular reason why we need to do it here. So because it'll be online, I'll be using the browser lockdown, so you can't kind of go search. Not that I don't trust you guys, but just to be safe. But it will be open books, so you will be allowed to use your books. But remember that that's also kind of a mixed blessing, right?
Yeah.
Because you can then end up spending a lot of time digging through your book looking for shit. So I'll give you sample questions, like I think I did for the midterm, and when you figure out which of the two sample questions you think you want to try to answer, just try to have your ducks in a row, right? Get your quotes in line and whatnot, so that when the time comes to take the exam, you're ready.
Oh, with that, we have to have actual quotes in our essay part of this.
If it's going to be open book, I would like you to make direct reference to the text. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want us to write a works cited at the end too?
Nah.
Okay.
'Cause I know what your sole works cited is. So.
Is it going to be these books?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So the essay questions now there may be vocab questions. That will be sort of across the semester, right?
Yeah.
But the essay questions will refer to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yes.
Because that's basically what we've been doing over this half of the semester. So.
Okay. But I was just making sure I'm not going to have to go dig back through the fall of God and start pulling from that. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Because that just made... I don't know about the rest of
Yeah, well, I figured, there's only two of you, so it wouldn't be that hard to coordinate schedules, but this is just easier.
Yeah.
And I feel that, there's enough stressful shit going on at the end of the semester that if we can kind of take one worry out of there, then that's all to the good. Is it really warm in this room?
It's warm in this building.
Yeah.
Okay.
I swear to turn off the air conditioner in the second half of the day.
Yeah, I think they probably are to save power or something, because the state keeps clawing back our budget. But yeah, so yeah, write to your state senators and state representatives about that. But
Student
yeah.
FGSW. It's hotter than you know what
Yes.
in our English department
Yes.
building.
Please advise. Yes.
Please advise.
Okay. So any other questions about anything that's coming up? Okay, great. So I kind of wanted to start today by getting to something that we didn't really have time to talk about last time. And that is the change in the nature of Gandalf. And I think it'd be a good idea to kind of compare here what we see of Gandalf and Saruman in this first book of the Two Towers overall. So let's start actually with Saruman. Like what we talked a little bit about Saruman last time, right? So what have we noticed about Saruman?
He's stationary.
What's that?
I called him a utilitarian.
Okay, yes, you actually both said something good and interesting at the same time. So you said, yeah, he's stationary. Yeah, unlike Gandalf, he doesn't wander. He's in a fixed place, right? And you called him utilitarian, Nick. So what about Saruman suggests utilitarianism to you?
The scene where Treebeard was talking about him, he was saying the only reason he would ever visit Fangorn was simply to check up on things, see what was going on, and that was really it.
Yeah, just pumping Treebeard for information. Yeah. Okay. He's manipulative. And we can see. I think that there's more to the utilitarian thing that I'd like to kind of tease out in a minute. But yeah, I think that's a good term for his basic attitudes. Because what do we remember about his conversation with Gandalf when Gandalf went to visit him in the Fellowship of the Ring? Why did Saruman think it was a good idea to join with Mordor?
Because the time of elves and men were ending?
Yeah. Basically because he thought Mordor was going to win, right? So he's like, better to be on the winning side, right? And then try to guide it and direct it than to be on the losing side and just get swept away, right?
You're back to the wrong course, that's for sure.
Well, and I think that Saruman actually shares something very important in common with Sauron. I think we kind of have like a sort of almost like battle against Sauron in miniature in the battle against Saruman in the first book of the Two Towers. And one thing that is true of both of them, right, is that they seem to leave certain things out of their plans, right? In some ways, they lack imagination and are thus unable to contemplate certain eventualities, right? So what does Saruman leave out of his plans? What did he leave out of his plans when he captured Gandalf?
That Gandalf would escape.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how did Gandalf escape?
About the eagle.
Yeah, because whatever spells and wards he put up didn't keep animals out, right?
I'm probably remembering this wrong.
Uh-huh.
Didn't he use a moth to like get word to the eagle?
That was the movie.
That's in the movie, yeah.
This is just the problem.
Yeah.
I read this and then I'm like, this isn't good.
I know, you've got two visions of the scene that are similar enough that it seems like they're coming from the same place. But yeah, I think the whole moth thing is Peter Jackson's invention, yeah.
Okay.
But I think the point remains, right, that Saruman doesn't imagine that animals are a threat or a problem.
He's arrogant.
Yeah, he's arrogant. And that's part of it. What else? Like, in his final downfall here, or I mean, not his final downfall, but his downfall, at least in this part of the book, right? What did his plans not account for?
The Ents.
Yeah, he never imagined the Ents attacking Isengard, right? So he has little or no regard for nature. Right, back to that whole, the mind of machines and wheels, right? I think this also kind of goes along with the whole stationary thing, as well as the whole arrogant and manipulative thing. Let's look at the what is it that somebody says something in the Palantir chapter about Saruman that I wanted to about Saruman's perceived greatness.
Is that Flotsam?
Maybe in the Flotsam Jetsam chapter, yeah. So yeah, if you find it before I do. Okay, yeah, there's a point. It's when Mary is filling in Aragorn and the other companions about sort of like, about the destruction of the gate, right? They pushed, pulled, tore, shook, and hammered, and clang, bang, crash, crack. In 5 minutes, they had these huge gates just lying in ruin. And some were beginning to eat into the walls like rabbits in a sandpit. I don't know what Saruman thought was happening, but anyway, he did not know how to deal with it. His wizardry may have been falling off lately, of course. But anyway, I think he has not much grit, not much plain courage alone in a tight place, without a lot of slaves and machines and things, if you know what I mean. Very different from old Gandalf. I wonder if his fame was not all along mainly due to his cleverness in settling in Isengard. So, Saruman as he is now, right, works primarily through slaves and machines. Not on his own, right? Keeps intermediaries between himself and the rest of the world. And I think what we see in Isengard is a kind of top-down industrial structure. With Saruman almost as like the robber baron sitting at the top of the pile, with men just below him, right? The men who serve him, we're told they're given good provisions, right? Which is why Merry and Pippin are able to rustle up a good meal for their visiting friends, and then orcs below that, right? So Saruman's organization seems to be hierarchical, and he seems to be the one doing the least work, right? Now, how is that different from the way Gandalf operates?
Gandalf gets his hands dirty.
Yeah. Gandalf acts directly, right? And is Gandalf's manner particularly smooth or rhetorically persuasive most of the time?
No.
Yeah, Gandalf is kind of cranky and testy, right?
But he's also kind of secretive too.
Yeah,
He'll only give you bits and pieces of the picture, not the whole thing.
yeah. You're right, he holds things back as well. does he hold things back for different purposes than Saruman?
Yes.
Saruman wants to make sure he knows more than you do, right?
Mhm.
Why does Gandalf, for example, hold back what he knows about the Palantir from Pippin?
So it wouldn't arouse his interest?
Yeah, because he knows that little fucker's going to go pick the stupid thing up, right, and stare into it.
Yeah.
So Gandalf's secrecy is often in the interest of protecting people who are weaker than him, right? And also to throw evil off the scent, right? For example, why doesn't he want Aragorn to use the Palantir yet?
So Sauron will see what they're doing and planning.
Yeah, he doesn't want Sauron to realize yet that that they're trying to restore the kingship, right? I think the idea of kingship here is important as well. I think there are two models that were given of kind of top-down hierarchical social structures, one of which Tolkien likes and the other of which he doesn't, right? He seems to like hereditary feudal monarchy, right? In fact, it seems like no kingdom is really in proper order unless the king is present and healthy and involved, right? Everything's going wrong in Rohan, for example, because King Theoden is ensorcelled, right? He's been weakened by the words of his counselor Wormtongue, right? Who's working on behalf of Saruman. Gondor won't restore its former glory until the king comes back, right? Until Aragorn is on the throne. We also have societies that are relatively kind of like flat and anarchistic, like the Shire, right? There seems to be a little bit of a class structure in the Shire, but nobody rules there really, right?
I think like they have a mayor.
Yeah.
The mayor's also the postman
Yeah.
and the police officer.
Yeah, the mayor's duties are relatively few in the Shire,
Yeah.
right? It's mostly a ceremonial position.
Yeah.
Society in the Shire isn't sufficiently complex to require any kind of, larger government structure, right? But yeah, so feudal monarchy, good. Top-down industrial society, bad. And I think that the top-down industrial society that Saruman represents here, particularly as we'll see in the Scouring of the Shire episode at the end of the novel, it's been related to both fascism and communism by scholars. So, some see it as critique of the far right, some read it as critique of the far left, others see it as both. I think there's an element of both in there myself, but we'll pull that out as we get further, as we get deeper into this stuff. It's just something to watch for further on down the line. But let's go back to what Mary said about Saruman not having much real grit when in a tight place by himself, and how Aragorn responds, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, said Aragorn. Once he was as great as his fame made him. His knowledge was deep, his thought was subtle, and his hands marvelously skilled, and he had a power over the minds of others. The wise he could persuade, and the smaller folk he could daunt. That power he certainly still keeps. There are not many in Middle-earth, I should say, were safe, if they were left alone to talk with him, even now when he has suffered a defeat. Gandalf, Elrond, and Galadriel, perhaps, now that his wickedness has been laid bare, but very few others. So, where does Saruman's real power lie?
His ability to control.
Yeah.
His words.
Yeah, his ability to control through speech, right? So, what Saruman is an extremely effective rhetorician, right? He is a master of persuasion. If he can't persuade you, he'll terrify you. And a lot of what's going on, particularly in the Voice of Saruman chapter, I think is this kind of traditional suspicion that goes back to Plato of the art of rhetoric, right? So how have we talked about this before? Whether you guys are familiar with Plato's dialogue, the Gorgias?
I think we had talked about it earlier this semester, but I'm not
Okay.
100% remember it.
Yeah, I can't always recall what I talk about a lot of the same things in different classes, so I'm not always sure what I've told to what class. So, in the Gorgias, Plato argues through the character of Socrates that rhetoric is a dangerous and inferior counterfeit of philosophy. Because while philosophers seek after truth, rhetoricians seek only to create belief. And this is a lot of what comes out of the rather unfair and one-sided dialogue between Socrates and Gorgias, right? Gorgias talks about how good he is at making people believe things. Whereas Socrates takes the position that this is actually pernicious, right? That if you're just creating belief about things, then society you're building a society on no real firm basis. And I think that Saruman is quite similar in a lot of ways here to the way Gorgias is portrayed in Plato's dialogue. Right, that Saruman is a very effective speaker. Who is able to sway the crowd, right? Note that when he's speaking, the reactions of the principal characters, right, tend to be more skeptical, right? They're more suspicious of Saruman. Gandalf doesn't buy it, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli don't buy it, Éomer and Theoden don't buy it, but the riders who are sitting by listening are persuaded. Right, if we go to the Voice of Saruman chapter when he comes out onto his balcony for the first time. Right. The window closed. They waited.
Huh?
What's that?
I was about to ask. I found it.
Okay, good. Oh, yeah, actually, can you read it for us then?
Yeah.
And tell us what the page number is so you can find it.
201.
Yes, okay.
201.
Yes. The window closed. They waited. Suddenly another voice spoke, low and melodious. Its very sound and enchantment. Those who listened unwarily to that voice could seldom report the words that they heard, and if they did, they wondered, for little power remained in them. Mostly they remembered only that it was a delight to hear the voice speaking, all that it seemed wise and reasonable, and desire awoke in them, by swift agreement to seem wise themselves. When others spoke, they seemed harsh and uncouth by contrast, and if they gainsaid the voice, anger was kindled in the hearts of those under the spell. For some the spell lasted only while the voice spoke to them, and when it spoke to another, they smiled, as men do who see through a juggler's trick while others gape at it. For many the sound of the voice alone was enough to hold them enthralled, but for those whom it conquered, the spell endured when they were far away, and ever they heard that soft voice whispering and urging them. But none were unmoved, none rejected its pleas and its commands without an effort of mind and will, so long as its master had control of it.
Okay, so what do we notice here about what's said here about Saruman's speech?
It's soothing in a way.
Yeah.
It's low and melodious.
Uh-huh. It sounds beautiful, right? Yeah.
It enthralls the listener.
Yeah. But then what's weird about it? Does it sound like he really convinces people through mustering solid arguments and good evidence?
Yeah.
Why not?
It says, the soft voice was whispering and urging them. It's also having to plead and command.
Uh-huh.
People aren't just willingly falling under it.
Yeah.
There's some that their minds are resisting it. So now it has to start to plead.
Sure. So what matters here is style, right?
Mm-hmm. It starts out strong and beautiful. It ends begging.
Yeah, or he does whatever he needs to serve whatever purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if this approach doesn't work with you, I'll try something else.
Yeah.
But does anybody actually seem to remember the content of his speeches?
No.
Yeah, the content seems to be almost irrelevant, right? The basic idea here is as long as he's speaking, he can make at least the weak-willed believe absolutely fucking anything, right? So yeah, it's a speech that's all sound, no substance. Right, exactly the sort of thing that Plato accused Gorgias of peddling. People agree with Saruman because he sounds smart. And because he sounds smart, they think they'll sound smart if they agree with him, right? What he actually says doesn't matter. They don't even fucking remember it.
That being said, I'd probably believe anything that Christopher Lee had to say.
What's that?
I'd probably believe anything Christopher Lee had to say.
Yeah. Probably. That man had a nice voice.
He's got that withered old man voice.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen any he made his way up in British horror movies in the 60s and 70s, many of which are great. But he was told by a director once. He was in a black ops unit in the British Army in World War II, and he was told once by a director to imagine the sound it would make when he was if you were stabbing a man in the back, and he looked at him and grinned and said, "I don't have to imagine it."
Yeah, excuse my language, but he was a badass.
Yeah.
He was like 70 years old and in a death metal band, so.
Yeah.
They went. Peter Jackson was the right
No,
person.
that was very, very, very good casting. Yeah. But I think again, because of the sonorous quality of his voice, right? Yeah. But let's look at how he tries to persuade his audience here now, right? And how they respond to him, right? So get somebody to continue reading from it said now with gentle question.
Okay, yep, got it. Well, it said now with gentle question, why must you disturb my rest? Will you give me no peace at all by night or day? Its tone was that of a kindly heart aggrieved by injuries and undeserved.
Mm-hmm.
They looked up astonished, for they had heard no sound of his coming. and they saw a figure standing at the rail looking down upon them. An old man, swathed in a great cloak, the color of which was not easy to tell, for it changed it if they moved their eyes or if he stirred. His face was long with a high forehead. He had deep, darkling eyes, hard to fathom, though the look that they now bore was grave and benevolent, and a little weary. His hair and beard were white, but strands of black still showed about his lips and ears. Like and yet unlike, muttered Gimli. But come now, said the soft voice, two at least of you I know by name. Gandalf I know too well to have much hope that he seeks help or counsel here. But you, Theoden, Lord of the Mark of Rohan, are declared by your noble devices, and still more by the fair countenance of the house of Yorl. O worthy son of Thangel, the thrice renowned, why have you not come before? And as a friend, much have I desired to see you, mightiest king of western lands, and especially in these latter years, to save you from the unwise and evil counsels that beset you. Is it yet too late? Despite the injuries that have been done to me, in which the men of Rohan, alas, have had some part, still I would save you, and deliver you from the ruin that draws nigh inevitable. If you ride upon this road which you have taken, indeed I alone can aid you now.
Okay, so how does Saruman position himself here in relation to these people who have ridden up to his castle?
A savior.
A savior, and also what? Who's the wronged party here?
Gandalf.
Yeah, Saruman's the wrong party.
Yeah, he's presenting himself not only as the savior, but also as the victim, right?
Oh, okay. When you said wrong party, I
Well,
thought
you
you
not
were
let me have
saying
any
that
peace?
Gandalf.
Yeah.
And oh, I hear you've received some very deceitful dealings.
Uh-huh.
Let me help you.
Yeah, let me save you from the ill counsels that beset you, right? Do not continue down this road, O noble king of Rohan, right? I can save you no matter how much harm you have done to me. Meanwhile, as Theoden himself eventually remembers here, right, once he shakes off the haze of the spell, Saruman is responsible for the death of his only son, for the brutal killing of his captain of the guard, and for burned villages and dead women and children across Rohan, right? So the problem with Saruman's argument here is that the facts do get in the way. Right? Anybody looking at this objectively would not view Saruman as the wronged party. Saruman invaded Rohan, did a hell of a lot of damage, and would have done more had the Ents not showed up at his doorstep, right? So, his savior-victim routine plays false here. Now, how can we compare this, say, to Gandalf's behavior? Say when he comes to speak with King Theoden. In which chapter, by the way, we get another Beowulf echo, right? Specifically in the guard's decision to trust them, right?
That's the king of the Golden Hall.
Yeah.
Does it start now, Theoden, son of Thingol?
Yeah, we'll go there for some. One more thing I want to note about sort of what quality is his voice given? I just sort of remembered this as I was looking for this here. What are we told about the tonal quality of his voice?
No, it's melodious.
Yeah, and it's soft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, who else has had soft voices that meant ill?
No.
Okay, Smaug did, right? Grishnak does, right? Grishnak has a soft but evil voice, right? And even, the riders, when they're questioning hobbits, softly hiss, right? So soft voices seem to be associated with evil intent.
Well, I mean, if you're going about doing evil things, you don't exactly want to be shouting it from the rooftop.
Yeah, well, Ugluk does, right?
Ugluk's the exception.
Yeah, I mean, Ugluk is a very but I think that Ugluk and Grishnak both exemplify sort of like different aspects of Saruman's own personality, right? Ugluk is that will to dominate, and Grishnak is that kind of cajoling voice that tries to just bring you over to its side by sounding soft and reasonable, right?
Mm. Well, that, and if you just like look at people in general, when someone's yelling or shouting, we kind of shrink in, but when they're soft, we want to lean in closer to them.
Mm-hmm. Although shoutiness can also be persuasive, right? It depends on what you're trying to persuade someone of, and who you're trying to persuade, right?
Yeah. Well, like, okay, if you came in here and started yelling, "Take my sci-fi fantasy class," we're like, no. But he's like,
No,
hey,
yeah.
I have a sci-fi fantasy class.
Exactly. Because that approach would be completely inappropriate for the situation, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you guys were sitting here and you just do like, I'm trying to lecture and you wouldn't shut up, you just kept talking, right? Then I might get shouty to try to frighten you into silence, right? Now, that probably wouldn't be the most effective pedagogy, but different situations require different approaches, right?
Yeah.
And that seems to be something that Saruman understands. But I think, again, like the softness and melodiousness of his voice is in direct contrast to the lack of content in his speeches.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It sounds good, but there's nothing behind it.
Yeah.
Now, to turn back to Gandalf in The King of the Golden Hall.
Oh, yeah, I have it.
Where it says, "Now Theoden."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
"Now Theoden, son of Thingol, will you hearken to me?" said Gandalf. "Do you ask for help?" He lifted his staff and pointed to a high window. There the darkness seemed clear, and through the opening could be seen, high and far, a patch of shining sky. "Not all is dark. Take courage, Lord of the Mark, for better help you will not find. No counsel have I to give to those that despair, yet counsel I could give, and words I could speak to you. Will you hear them? They are not for all ears. I bid you come out before your doors and look abroad. Too long have you sat in shadows and trusted to twisted tales and crooked promptings."
So this is also rhetorically effective, right? What is Gandalf trying to? What is he trying to do here? What is he trying to accomplish? And why is what he does appropriate for his audience?
He's trying to draw Theoden out of the dark,
Mm-hmm.
out of the counsel Wormtongue's given him.
Uh-huh.
He's like, "I'll offer. Take courage, Lord of the Mark, for better help you will not find. No counsel have I to give to those that despair, yet counsel I could give, and words I could speak to you." Like, I'm going to give you my counsel, but
you have to do this for me first, right?
this.
So he is holding back the advice, right? until such time as Theoden does the thing he's supposed to do. But he's also like he's making use of the environment to make his point here too, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, not all is dark. See, look, patch of shining sky.
Yeah.
And what he is like, so Saruman seems almost to be kind of like trying to lull you to sleep, right?
Yeah.
Where it sounds like Gandalf is basically trying to wake somebody up from a sleep, right? So the difference here being that Saruman is trying to lull you solely into trusting him, right? Whereas Gandalf is trying to wake you up to take action yourself.
This might be a weird analogy, but
Uh-huh.
Saruman and Gandalf seem to be a lot like Ka and Baloo from Jungle Book. Saruman,
Okay.
Ka tries to lull Mowgli into his sleep to get him to relax.
Uh-huh.
Don't forget about the human village, just relax.
Uh-huh.
And then Baloo runs in and he's like, wake up, Mowgli. Actually, I can't remember if that was the Panther or if it was Baloo. But
Uh-huh.
the way they wake him up is about this.
It was the Panther.
Okay, then I have the device wrong. But
But I think you've got the right. If I'm remembering from the old cartoon movie too, the song Ka sings even is
Yeah.
"Trust in Me," yeah,
Yeah.
"Just in Me," yeah,
And he's swaying.
yeah, and I think that is actually a good analogy. I think that does actually kind of describe the situation here. That they're both arguing over the king's soul in a way here, right? But Gandalf wants him just to like get up and do something, and Saruman wants him to go to sleep so that he can have free reign in Rohan, right?
The Panther's name was Bagheera. Tell me you're a Disney fan without telling me you're a Disney fan. Not the Stitch Cup or anything.
But I think I also want to point to that place where Gandalf reappears in the White Rider chapter. It's when they come upon him and he springs onto the top of the large rock. The last paragraph of that section, right? He says, "Yes, I am white now," said Gandalf. "Indeed, I am Saruman, one might almost say. Saruman as he should have been." Right, indicating that Saruman has fallen away from the path, right? That Saruman has fallen away from the standard, and that Gandalf's reincarnation is an attempt to correct that mistake, right? So Gandalf the Grey becomes Gandalf the White, to replace Saruman, who now calls himself Saruman of many colors, right? So I think the many colors is intended to indicate mastery of all things. Yeah, go ahead.
English is hard. Also as, in nature, multicolored animals are generally poisonous.
Okay, I hadn't thought of that, but I think the way the text structures it, I think, is actually more in terms of the way light works, right?
Yeah.
That white White
It
reflects all light, yeah. White reflects everything. Black absorbs all light, sucks it in. White reflects all light. And if you splinter that light, if you break that light with, say, like a prism, right? Then you get that full spectrum of colors. So, from the perspective of Gandalf, and I think of the novel generally, the many colors thing is what you get when you break white. Right? You crack it open and you can't put it back together again. So I think that white is associated
With wholeness.
yeah, with wholeness and unity. And that the many colors thing with fragmentation. That Saruman is basically thus kind of a broken personality. Whereas Gandalf is the now more fully integrated personality. Right? The gray, the little bits of black that clung to him, are purified out now. And he is the white. Entirely whole. Okay, so I didn't really want to talk too much about the whole Helm's Deep thing, in part because I want to give you plenty of scope for your presentation when you're talking about war and battle. Although I do want to note there are some similarities here between the Helm's Deep battle and the battle in the Fall of Gondolin, right? Particularly with things that seem almost kind of gunpowdery. So Saruman's wizardry seems to be a mechanical wizardry as much as like what we would think of typically as, sorcery, casting spells and shit like that, right? But I think I want to talk a little bit more here about the Palantir and about Merry and Pippin.
I appreciate the main home suit, the orcs more or less make orc Molotov cocktails.
Yeah.
I gotta give him credit on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, one of Saruman's advantages here is that he's given his troops more sophisticated weapons, right? And I think, like, this is, like, part of where we see how Tolkien paints what he views as the arrogance of the industrialist, right? Mm-hmm. That, how could a scattered bunch of silly little horsemen living in a feudal society fighting with swords and bows beat back these hordes of biologically engineered super soldiers with gunpowder weapons and gas-powered weapons, right? And it's interesting, I think, he describes it in terms that would still fit within a vaguely kind of medieval-ish world, but you can also see, the thing that they use to blow up the blow a hole in the wall, right? Yeah, it's basically gunpowder, right?
Yep.
But yeah, we're given it from the perspective of how it would look to, basically, to a Dark Age Anglo-Saxon. So, I think it's important here that the chapter where Merry and Pippin are reintroduced to their friends here is called Flotsam and Jetsam. Does anybody know what the phrase flotsam and jetsam means?
I've heard of it. I'm not
Is
sure.
it flotsam?
Sorry.
Flotsam's like the top of the water, isn't it? Or something?
Sort of. Essentially what flotsam and jetsam is unwanted debris. Right, just kind of scattered crap that's left out wherever, right? Flotsam and Jetsam is also one of the most underrated thrash metal bands of the 1980s. So just take that under advisement as well.
Did you say underrated?
Underrated, yes.
What century? Sorry, what
What decade? 80s and 90s. In fact, Jason Newsted, who eventually ended up in replacing Cliff Burton in Metallica, was their original bassist. Which is probably the thing they're best known for, is the, hey, a guy in this band went on to a bigger band. But yeah, it's some good stuff. But anyway, the reason this is important is because this is kind of what Merry and, like, on the one hand, this is what Merry and Pippin have done, right? They've gathered up all this debris that's been left behind in Saruman's fortress, right? So they gather up the various unclaimed goodies, which includes not just food, but also a couple small barrels of pipeweed. Which presents a mystery for Aragorn. And also because Merry and Pippin themselves have described themselves at various points as being kind of like almost like unwanted luggage, right? So we have here a chapter in which the luggage right, these characters who have overall been feeling pretty useless compared to, the heroes that they've been traveling with. Take center stage. And most of this chapter works, again, through analepsis and prolepsis. In fact, we've already probably noticed that these seem to be the primary kind of storytelling techniques of this half of the book, right? Or this section of the book. That we keep getting these flashbacks and flash forwards. Right? We don't see directly any of the Ents battle with Saruman. What we get is a report of what happened from Merry and Pippin after we've seen the results of the battle. And what we get here in terms of prolepsis is the discovery of the long-bottom leaf. Right, this high-quality pipeweed imported from the Shire. So we have a mystery here that is established to be solved later on in the narrative, right? How is Saruman getting this stuff? And I think that this in part because of, what's, where regionally this is taking place, we can also kind of connect this to Sam's vision in the Mirror of Galadriel. And why do none of these markers last more than a few seconds? Starting to wonder if the markers are shitty or if the board is shitty.
Or both.
Might be a little of both. But yeah, we had those scenes of prolepsis in the mirror as well, right? Showing us all of these things that are going to happen in the future, or that might be happening in the present, or that maybe happened in the past. But yeah, this is this connects us directly back to that scene of Bagshot Row being dug up and the gaffer being turned out of his house and all of these the black smoke in the Shire and all that. That a reminder that back in the Hobbit's home, right, the world hasn't stopped moving just because they're gone. There are still things going on there, bad things. Now the last thing that I want to discuss today, so we got, about maybe 10 minutes to go here, is Pippin's encounter with the Palantir, because we've been talking a lot about these various seeing devices, and I think talking about the Mirror of Galadriel is a good way to kind of segue into that. So, what does Pippin see?
The Nazgul.
Yeah. He sees the Nazgul riding around a tower, right? And then one of them comes up close and threatens him, right? So how is this different from other kinds of seeing that we've looked at
It's more
before?
It's more active and direct.
Okay, yeah.
Hold them up on Skype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not only can Pippin see what's going on in Mordor, Mordor can see what's going on where they're at.
Yeah, this is
It's two-way.
This is two-way, yes. You're right. This is the first example of genuine two-way communication across time and space that we've seen, right? Well, at the very least across space, maybe not across time. Right? So the Mirror of Galadriel only showed these kind of, these moving images. And when Frodo sees the Eye of Sauron in the water, Galadriel's able to shut it down and keep it out, right? Now, Frodo also sees the Eye of Sauron when he sits on Amon Hen, but he doesn't interact with it, right? He still has the ring and he shouts something, but he doesn't get the sense that the eye has actually seen him, right? He doesn't directly communicate with it. Now, in this case, yeah, we have actual direct two-way communication via Seeing Stone. I like the comparison to Skype. That makes a lot of sense.
Middle Earth Skype.
Yeah.
Well, also, this was how Saruman was communicating with Sauron.
Yeah.
Whereas Galadriel only uses her mirror to see things that may have happened or may have already happened.
Uh-huh.
Plus, she can keep out Sauron if she wants to. She's one of the only
Sure.
two that can fight him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and probably so could Saruman have, right? Although Galadriel has the advantage of having one of the three rings, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are told that Saruman, could withstand an assault from the Nazgul if he stays in Orthanc. But yeah, there is a sense that these devices, things like the Palantir, right? So the Palantir is one of these kind of objects that has come down directly from the older world, right? We're told that they're made.
Sorry, that was not me, I swear.
What's that?
My chair creaked.
Oh, okay, no problem. That they're made by the great First Age elven craftsman Feanor in the Undying Lands, right, and then brought over from across the sea, and that they are set up in the Dunedain kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor in various strategic locations, right? One of them being the Tower of Orthanc. So this thing was probably already there when Saruman took up residence in the tower. Now, I want to go to the... if we look sort of towards the end of the chapter, the Palantir, right? After the little poem about tall ships and tall kings 3 times 3, Gandalf gives Pippin an explanation of what these things are, right? Right. You know, Pippin says, like that it was not made. Pippin hesitated by the enemy.
Yeah.
No, said Gandalf, nor by Saruman. It is beyond his art and beyond Sauron's too, and thus presumably also behind Gandalf's, since he and Saruman and Sauron are all basically the same kind of being. The Palantiri came from beyond Westerness, from Eldamar. The Noldor made them. Feanor himself maybe wrought them, in days so long ago that the time cannot be measured in years. But there is nothing that Sauron cannot turn to evil uses. Alas for Saruman, it was his downfall, as I now perceive. Perilous to us all are the devices of an art deeper than we possess ourselves. Yet he must bear the blame, fool, to keep it secret for his own profit. No word did he ever speak of it to any of the council. We had not yet given thought to the fate of the Palantiri in Gondor and its ruinous wars. By men they were almost forgotten. Even in Gondor they were a secret known only to a few. In Arnor they were remembered only in a rhyme of lore among the Dunedain. What did the men of old use them for? Asked Pippin, delighted and astonished at getting answers to so many questions, and wondering how long it would last. To see far off, and to converse in thought with one another, said Gandalf. In that way they long guarded and united the realm of Gondor. They set up stones at Minas Anor, at Minas Ithil, and at Orthanc in the Ring of Isengard. The chief and master of these was under the Dome of Stars at Osgiliath before its ruin. The 3 others were far away in the north. In the house of Elrond it is told that they were at Anaminas and Amon Sul, and Elendil Stone was on the tower hills that look towards Mithlond in the Gulf of Lune, where the grey ships lie. Each Palantir replied each to each, but all those in Gondor were ever open to the view of Osgiliath. Now it appears that, as the Rock of Orthanc has withstood the storms of time, so there the Palantir of that tower has remained. But alone it could do nothing but see small images of things far off and days remote. Very useful, no doubt, that was to Saruman, yet it seems that he was not content. Further and further abroad he gazed, until he cast his gaze upon Barad-dûr. Then he was caught. So, ideally, what do the stones allow for? What do they do? What do they provide?
Knowledge of far off places.
Yeah, they
What's
provide.
going-
Go ahead, keep going.
What's going on over in this kingdom?
Yeah.
We begin to worry for our own kingdom.
Okay, so they provide knowledge. Yeah. But remember that when all the stones are functioning, right, they also create a communication network. And I think that one of the most dangerous things about Sauron and the way the novel presents him, right, is the way that he has managed to dominate and infect this particular network, right? That this is about the only way people have of communicating over long distances. It's lost, it's ancient technology, it's lost, right? But these couple of stones survive, and he is able to use them to dominate others from a distance, right? And to present false images, or present images out of context in a way that makes it look like something's happening when it isn't, as we'll see in The Return of the King. So I think part of the issue here, right, is that the communication network is used as a means not of ruling a realm wisely, but as a means of domination. Right, seen almost literally in the way Pippin gets momentarily possessed, right? When he makes contact with that Nazgul. And I think it's also probably worth noting that when he was in the army during the First World War, Tolkien was a signals officer. So communication was his specific area of military expertise. So I'm not quite sure what that directly has to do with the Palantir, but I think there's something going on there.
Well, I mean,
Something about communication and signals. I don't know, but...
I mean, was there the notion of the crystal ball before the 1950s?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But I think it's also like... one of the things I find most interesting about this is that, like, you could read this thing either as technology that we simply don't understand anymore, or as pure magic, right? That the story doesn't seem to make a distinction between the two.
I would see, because Tolkien was a communications officer, I mean, it was his job was essential. If
Mhm.
he was compromised in any way, was stopping the enemy from taking over.
Yeah,
So maybe,
Mhm.
and that's what has happened here. The enemy has
Sure.
taken over this communication network.
and if you can't get information, or if you're given bad information, you're going to take the wrong actions, right?
Yeah.
And I think that part of the idea here is to get, is for, Sauron trying to get his opponents to move in particular directions, right? Trying to force them to do things that are to his advantage. But then again, I think the whole seeing aspect of this also comes with a certain level of arrogance, right? Clearly Sauron, the lidless eye, sees more than anybody else. But because he's always looking through the kind of panoramic view, right? He misses the Ents attacking Saruman's tower. He misses the tiny little hobbit feet creeping up the path of Cirith Ungol, right?
Yeah.
He's not looking at the close-up. So we're going to stop there because we are about out of time since we started early. So let me give you the guide questions for next time, when we will rejoin Frodo and Samwise on their way into Mordor. With their happy, cheerful little guide.
Yeah. Gollum's just a